The terminal at Houston Intercontinental hummed with its usual Friday evening energy. Rolling suitcases, families reunited, business travelers tapping at phones. At Gate C-29, Flight 472 to Denver prepared to board. Two little girls, Skylar, 9, and her sister Naomi, 8, stood at the front of the line, clutching matching burgundy rolling carry-ons and their boarding passes. Their crisp school uniforms and neatly pressed cardigans gave them an air of pride. Their bright eyes reflected excitement for the weekend ahead. They'd traveled alone before, escorted by a Delta, unaccompanied minor attendant all the way from the check-in desk. Their father, Julian Ward, CEO of Ward Tech Security Solutions, had personally arranged every detail. But none of that mattered the moment the gate agent looked at them. Patricia Davis, the lead attendant for JetSure Airways, scanned Skylar's boarding pass. A quick beep, then a second-long pause. Patricia's lips curled into a cold half-smile. She didn't hand the pass back. Instead, she gripped it between polished fingernails and ripped it in two. "Sweethearts," she said loud enough for half the gate to hear, voice dripping condescension. "You clearly don't belong here." Naomi's eyes went wide. She took an involuntary step back, clutching at Skylar's sleeve. "But," she began, voice quavering. Skylar shot her sister a look of fierce protectiveness. "We have tickets," she said, voice shaking but determined. Patricia tossed the torn remnants into the trash bin with a flick of her wrist. She turned her back to the girls and addressed the crowd. "If anybody here is missing their real boarding passes, feel free to step forward and collect them." A murmur rippled through the line. A mother with a toddler shifted uncomfortably. A businessman in a sharp suit pretended not to listen. One or two people glanced over and quickly looked away. No one moved to help. Skylar's heart pounded. She sank to one knee so she could speak to Naomi at eye level. "Hey," she whispered, brushing a stray curl from Naomi's forehead. "Maybe it's a mistake. Let's just wait." Naomi nodded, tears threatening. "Okay," she managed, her voice catching. Patricia clicked her tongue. "Mistake? The system's very clear. 2 minors traveling alone. No additional ID on file. This flight is for ticketed passengers only." She drew out the word "only," as though it were the most precious adjective in the dictionary. Skylar swallowed, trying to steady herself. It's under my name. Skylar Ward. You can call for escort verification." Patricia's eyes flicked toward the nearby podium where a JetSure attendant in red blazer scanned in unaccompanied minors. Instead of summoning her, Patricia checked her manicure and said, "I'm not the one who handles UMs. You'll need the unaccompanied minor desk over there." She pointed toward an overcrowded service counter 2 gates down. Naomi's bottom lip trembled. "But we were told to wait here." "Policies change." Patricia's smile was brittle, her voice colder. "Those policies don't include children who can't produce a chaperone authorization form." Skylar looked around desperately. A man in a polo shirt eyed the scene with polite indifference. A teenager with earbuds shrugged and looked back at her phone. "I have my dad's business card," Skylar said, pulling a laminated card from her cardigan pocket. It bore Julian Ward's name and title in raised gold lettering. "He's a very important person. He arranged this trip himself." Patricia snatched the card and read it. Then she sneered and crumpled it in her hand. "Well, Mr. Ward can arrange a refund if he'd like. Right now, you two are not cleared for departure." Naomi gasped and buried her face in Skylar's shoulder. Tears flowed freely. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry." Skylar wrapped an arm around her sister. "Shh, it's okay," she whispered, though her own voice trembled. Patricia leaned in close, her breath scented faintly of peppermint gum. "Maybe next time these kids will remember that first class is reserved for paying adults." She turned on her heel with one last parting barb. "And some of us actually earn our paychecks." Skylar's hands balled into fists. Naomi clung to her, shoulders shaking. The little attendant in red, Skylar's official escort, stepped forward at last. "Come on, girls," she said gently, extending her hand. "Let's get you sorted." But the damage was done. The line behind them advanced. Passengers slid past as though Skylar and Naomi were invisible obstacles. A handful of people in the crowd recorded the spectacle on their phones, faces masked with a bizarre mix of disgust and voyeuristic glee. Skylar rose slowly, looking straight ahead. Her chest tightened. She knew what she had to do, though her young voice felt small. She raised her wrist and activated her smartwatch, the feature her dad had set up for emergencies. A simple message, typed out in trembling letters. "Dad, they won't let us board. They tore our passes. Help!" As she hit send, Naomi peeked around, eyes red and glistening. "Will he come?" she whispered. Skylar squeezed her sister's hand. "He'll come," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "He always keeps his promises." Far away, their father's phone buzzed. In that moment, the girls stood side by side at Gate C-29, ashamed, small, and powerless, unaware that within 30 minutes, their weekend flight would be grounded forever. Skylar and Naomi were guided, still trembling, toward the unaccompanied minor desk, a small cluster of counters manned by sympathetic jet-sure attendants in navy blazers. The hallway felt colder than the main concourse, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Naomi's hand shook so badly she could barely hold her boarding pass. Skylar gripped her sister's shoulder and took a deep breath. When they reached the desk, a younger attendant named Marisol glanced at their passes, then at two polished carry-ons, then back at the girls. "All right," Marisol said softly. "Let's see what we've got." She scanned the passes again, fingers tracing the barcode. Skylar gave a small nod of gratitude, her heart hammering. "Thank you," she whispered. But before Marisol could hand the passes back, a sharp voice cut through the calm. "Excuse me." Patricia Davis appeared at the end of the row, arms crossed, perfectly manicured nails tapping her forearm. "What's happening here? I thought you had these little escorts sorted." Her tone was mocking. Marisol's expression flickered with discomfort, but she's been trained never to back down from Patricia. "Ma'am, these minors came with a verified escort request. We're just confirming documentation." Patricia rolled her eyes and stepped forward, looming over the girls. "Documentation? They look like they couldn't find their way out of a daycare." She paused so that everyone in earshot could register the insult. Naomi squeezed Skylar's hand and took a tiny step back. Skylar squared her shoulders. "We were told, escorted minors go to this desk." Her voice wavered but carried more confidence than before. "We have our boarding passes and our school IDs." Patricia snorted. "School IDs? You're 8 and 9. You look like you still nap at 3. Bring me something grown up." She held up a finger, poised to snatch the passes again. Skylar closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the small laminated card her father had insisted on. "We also have my dad's business card." She reached inside her cardigan and produced a glossy card the size of a credit card. It read in embossed gold letters, "Julian Ward, Chief Executive Officer, Ward Tech Security Solutions, securing the skies, one innovation at a time." Patricia grabbed the card and held it at arm's length. She studied it for a beat, then deliberately flicked it open like a playing card. "Ward Tech? Who?" She flipped it shut and scoffed. "That doesn't mean you belong on this flight." Skylar swallowed hard. "It means that if my dad wants me on this flight, I'll be on it." Naomi's bottom lip quivered. She pointed at the photo on the card, her father's clean-shaven face in a crisp suit, and whispered, "He said he'd make sure we get there." Patricia's lips curled into a cruel smile. "His little girls? Maybe he couldn't protect you from grammar school, but I'll bet he can't protect you from missing this flight." She tore the card in half and dropped it at Naomi's feet. A hush fell over the cluster of passengers now watching. Some held smartphones, ready to record. One mother clutched her child tighter. A businessman in a navy tie opened his mouth to protest, but shut it again. No one stepped forward. Skylar knelt to pick up the pieces of her father's card. She brushed her fingers over the torn edges, feeling a fist-sized knot of humiliation form in her chest. Tears came unbidden to Naomi's eyes, and Skylar reached out to tuck a lock of her sister's hair behind her ear. "It's okay," she said quietly, though her own voice cracked. Marisol cleared her throat. "These tickets are valid. I can confirm they're paid for with the correct promo code for unaccompanied minors." She held up a tablet screen showing the payment details, a timestamp, a last-minute upgrade to main cabin extra, and a note, "Ward Tech VIP request." Patricia leaned over Marisol's shoulder, peering at the screen. "VIP? They look anything but." She flicked her gaze at the twins again, then back to Marisol. "I decide who's VIP around here." With that, she yelled across the desk, "Security!" Two burly officers strode in, approaching Skylar and Naomi. Naomi let out a small gasp, and Skylar's hand shot out to cover her sister's mouth. The officers exchanged a look with Patricia. Then one of them pointed to a nearby holding pen. Patricia straightened her uniform, satisfied. "You two can wait in the security pen until I figure out what to do with you. Don't touch the passes or your phones." The officers guided the girls by the elbow. Naomi's knees wobbled. Skylar stiff-armed the move, but she didn't fight back. They were marched off to the little fenced-in area behind the desk where other children sometimes waited for delayed flights. But this wasn't a friendly delay. This was a punishment. From a distance, Skylar glanced back and saw the torn card and crumpled boarding passes on the floor. Her chest felt hollow. She knelt briefly to scoop them up, tears running down her cheeks as passengers behind her looked away. Marisol tried to explain, voice hushed. "I'm so sorry. This isn't how it's supposed to go." She handed back the fragments of the card and the boarding passes. "Hold on to these. I'll sort it out." Skylar simply shook her head, clutching the torn paper to her chest. Naomi was shaking too, her sobs small but steady. Skylar set her jaw. "It's not okay," she said, quiet but firm. As Patricia walked away, head held high, the barbs left behind echoed in the twins' ears. But beneath their sorrow, a flicker of resolve kindled. They hadn't given up yet. Far across town, in a gleaming boardroom on the 35th floor of Ward Tech's headquarters, Julian Ward's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw two words, "Help us." His jaw tightened. He set down his coffee, straightened his tie, and strode out of the room without a backward glance. His daughters needed him now more than ever. Skylar and Naomi were herded into a small waiting pen behind the unaccompanied minor desk, the gray mesh fencing closing around them like a cage. From their confined vantage point, they could see patrons lining up for Gate C29, the very spot where their world had collapsed. The bright airport lights glinted off polished luggage wheels, and announcements crackled overhead about last calls and safety reminders. Ordinary sounds in an airport suddenly charged with cruelty. A group of business travelers in pressed suits chatted quietly at the front of the line. One of them glanced toward the girls, then returned his gaze to his phone screen without a word. A pair of college students, earbuds in, backpacks slung low, laughed about weekend plans, completely oblivious to the spectacle unfolding nearby. Behind them, a mother with a toddler paused, but her eyes quickly flicked away when theirs met the twins' tear-streaked faces. She clutched her child closer and moved on. Skylar felt her chest tighten. She swallowed hard, eyes scanning for any flicker of empathy. All she saw were backs turned, shoulders shrugged. Naomi stood beside her, little shoulders trembling, her bottom lip quivering in silent sobs. Skylar reached out and placed an arm around her sister, squeezing as if to hold both of them together against the world. A low murmur drifted through the line. Two elderly passengers, seated on a bench just outside the pen, whispered to each other in clipped tones. Skylar caught fragments. "They don't belong, not here alone. Probably trouble with their papers." The word stung sharper than the sting of tears. Naomi peeked through the mesh, voice tiny. "Sky, are they talking about us?" Skylar lifted her chin and forced a steady tone. "They're just people with bad manners." She looked at the older woman who'd been whispering and managed a curt nod that went unnoticed. A middle-aged man in a polo shirt finally raised his head as if sensing someone watching. He wandered closer, leaned in to get a better look at the girls. For a heartbeat, hope flared in Skylar's chest. Maybe he'd speak up. But the man simply shook his head, muttered to himself, and walked on. He blended back into the anonymous flow of travelers, disappearing with the promise of indifference. Skylar's stomach knotted. She swallowed around a lump in her throat, blinking fast so the tears wouldn't spill. Naomi's breath was ragged. Even the little red escort attendant, Marisol, hovered at the edge of sight, but remained silent. She'd looked apologetically at the twins earlier, but now she ducked her gaze whenever their eyes met. An announcement boomed overhead. Final boarding call for Flight 472 to Denver. All passengers, please proceed to Gate C29 immediately. Skylar glanced at her watch. 10 minutes since Patricia had torn their passes. 10 minutes since their dignity had been ripped away in public view. 10 minutes in which everyone had simply watched. Her fists clenched around the stitching of her cardigan. Across the pen, Naomi sank to her knees, burying her face in her hands. She stifled hiccups that racked her small frame. Skylar dropped to one knee beside her sister, brushing a strand of hair back from Naomi's tear-streaked cheek. "It's okay," Skylar whispered, though her own voice trembled. "I've got you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the larger piece of their father's business card, still bent but intact against the mesh. She held it out to Naomi. "Here, remember who we are." Naomi peeked through her fingers, eyes red and shiny. She nodded, clutching the card. Skylar drew in a shaky breath. "We'll fix this. Dad will fix it." Behind them, a woman in a colorful scarf held up her phone and began recording. Skylar's stomach flipped. Did she want her humiliation broadcast? She considered grabbing Naomi and bolting, but the fencing blocked any escape. They were trapped stage left in someone else's show. Then the murmur grew louder. A pilot in uniform, passing by on his way to another gate, caught wind of the commotion. He slowed, peered at the twins, and furrowed his brow. He glanced around, caught Marisol's eye, then continued walking, offering nothing but a narrowing of the jaw. Skylar bit her lip so hard it burned. She gazed at Naomi, who had lifted her head and sniffled. "Why won't anyone help us?" Naomi's whisper trembled with the weight of betrayal. Skylar hesitated. How could she explain that in a room full of adults, no one wanted to stick their necks out? People, I don't know, they're scared or just don't care. Naomi's shoulders slumped. "That's so mean." She tucked their torn boarding passes into her pocket as though holding on to the last shred of hope. Skylar stood and pressed her hands to the mesh, calling out, "You all paid for your tickets fair and square. We did too." Her voice cracked, louder than she intended. A handful of heads turned, some in annoyance, some curiosity. No one moved to help. Across the pen, Marisol finally stepped forward, voice tight. "Girls, I'm so sorry. If it were up to me..." She trailed off, eyes full of regret. Patricia appeared in the background, arms folded, surveying her handiwork with satisfaction. Skylar swallowed back bile. She straightened to face Patricia through the mesh. For a moment, the distant crowd blurred. This moment was between her, Naomi, and the cruelty of the gate agent. She lifted her chin and cleared her throat. "We are not invisible," she said, steady despite the tears. "And you will see us." Whether they heard her or not, the gate area seemed to flicker. Someone whispered into a phone. A cluster of passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Something had shifted in the air, the first tremor of justice. And somewhere far above, in a high-rise boardroom, Julian Ward's phone buzzed again. It had been a minute since the "Help us" message. Now, a second message. "They're alone. They're scared. They need you." He didn't hesitate. The air in his conference room shifted as he rose, white-knuckled, ready to use the power only a father and a CEO could wield. The slender shaft of late afternoon light cut through the terminal windows, painting long stripes across the cold linoleum floor of the unaccompanied minor pen. Inside that small fenced-in space, Skylar and Naomi huddled together on a pair of metal stools, too big for their little frames, beneath the harsh glare of fluorescent bulbs. All around them, the hum of rolling suitcases and distant boarding calls went on as though nothing had happened. Naomi's shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, and her blue cardigan, once crisp and neat, was rumpled from desperate grasps at Patricia's counter. Skylar scooted closer, draping an arm around her sister's trembling shoulder. Her own heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, to stay calm for Naomi's sake. "Shh," Skylar whispered, pressing her cheek against Naomi's hair. "It's not your fault." Naomi leaned into Skylar, clutching the larger piece of their father's torn business card like a talisman. "I'm so sorry, Sky," she murmured between hiccups. "I thought they'd understand." Her small voice cracked with guilt. She kept thinking she'd done something wrong, somehow at fault for trusting the airline's promises. Skylar wiped a stray tear from Naomi's face and tucked a soft curl behind her ear. "We did everything right," she said, firm but tender. "We showed our tickets. We waited. We listened. And it's them who are wrong." She looked up at the dull gray walls of the pen, imagining them dissolving under the weight of injustice. "Dad's going to fix this. He'll have to." Naomi sniffled and pressed her cheek into Skylar's sweatshirt. "Will he?" she asked, voice small and uncertain. "What if they don't listen?" Skylar reached into her pocket and pulled out the tiny smartwatch their dad had given her for emergencies. The soft beep she'd heard moments ago when she sent her message still echoed in her mind. She tapped the screen and saw the single word blinking back at her. Sent. "He will," Skylar said, though her own certainty wavered. She remembered her dad's strong voice at bedtime, reading her stories of brave heroes who always came through. "He's our hero," she thought. Still, the longer they sat here, the scarier it all felt. She hugged Naomi tighter. A janitorial cart rattled past, its attendant avoiding the pen's entrance. A flurry of footsteps echoed from the concourse beyond. No one offered help. No one knocked on the mesh to say, "Come on, girls, let's get you on that plane." The indifference stung worse than Patricia's cruelty. Skylar cleared her throat. "Remember when we missed the school bus last winter?" she asked, voice gentle. "You cried until Mom showed up with hot chocolate." Naomi nodded, a faint smile glimmering through tears. "She always fixed things." Skylar smiled back. "Yeah, and Dad fixes things too." She reached into her backpack and pulled out 2 granola bars, packed for their trip, offering one to Naomi. "Here," she said. "Eat something. You need your strength." Naomi took the bar, unwrapped it with trembling fingers, and nibbled. "Thanks." Her tears slowed to quiet sniffles. Skylar leaned against the mesh, placing her hand flat on the cold metal. "They can see us, but they don't see us," she whispered. "We're more than just faces in a pen." She raised her chin, steeling herself. "We're sisters, and we're brave." Naomi met her sister's gaze, her tears replaced by a fragile spark of defiance. "Brave," she echoed softly. An announcement crackled overhead. "Last call for Flight 472. All remaining passengers, please board now." Skylar's pulse quickened. The original boarding time had passed. They should have been halfway to Denver by now, stockings tucked under cozy blankets in their seats. Instead, they were trapped in this lonely pen, at the mercy of strangers. Skylar squeezed Naomi's hand. "We're going to tell Dad everything, every single word she said." She nodded once, decisively. "He needs to know how they made you feel." Naomi swallowed, nodding in return. "I want him to hear me." As they sat together, the terminal's bustle felt distant, like the world outside was a separate universe. Here, 2 little girls waited in silence, wounded but unbroken, forging courage in the quiet. Far above, At Ward Tech's gleaming headquarters, Julian Ward paused mid-conversation with a senior engineer. The flicker of an incoming message showed two simple words, "Help us," and a location, Gate C-29. His eyes narrowed. He straightened his shoulders. Whatever happened next, he knew exactly whose fault it was, and exactly how to make it right. The moment Patricia Davis snapped her fingers and barked, "Security!" the entire terminal seemed to go still. Skylar and Naomi sat frozen in the wire mesh pen, their small hand clutching the torn boarding passes and the shredded business card fragments like lifelines. They watched as two uniformed security officers, stern faces framed by earpieces, marched toward them with determined steps. Patricia stood back, arms folded, watching with a self-satisfied smirk as the officers approached. "These two," she called out, "are flagged for additional verification." She pointed at the girls one at a time. "Unaccompanied minors with suspicious circumstances. Handle it." One officer stepped forward, looming over Skylar. His badge read, "Officer Reynolds." He folded his arms. "Skylar." "Ward?" he prompted, voice low and official. Skylar's heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear it. She forced her chin up. "Yes," she whispered. Officer Reynolds glanced at Naomi, whose bottom lip quivered visibly. Patricia piped up, loud enough for half the gate to hear. "They've been claiming VIP status, but their paperwork is incomplete." Her tone implied something darker, like the girls were attempting fraud. Naomi pressed herself against Skylar's side. "We have our passes," Naomi stammered, her voice cracking. "We really do." Reynolds reached for Naomi's rolled-up sleeves, inspecting the school ID pinned there. "Let's see it." He ripped the ID card from her cardigan, held it between two fingers. Naomi whimpered, rubbing her arm where it pinched. Skylar surged forward, voice trembling but firm. "Give it back. You can't just take it." Reynolds ignored her and shoved the ID into his pocket. "Just follow me, sweetheart. We'll verify your identity." He gestured to a narrow corridor beside the desk, leading to a small side office labeled Security Verification Hold. "Please," Skylar said, desperation creeping into her words. "We'll go. Just be gentle." Reynolds stepped back, arms still crossed, leaving no room for negotiation. Skylar reached out, squeezing Naomi's hand. Neither girl pushed back. They knew resistance would only make things worse. They followed the officers into the cramped room. White walls, a single bench bolted to the floor, CCTV cameras in every corner. The door clicked shut behind them. Officer Reynolds locked the metal door and removed his gloves. A low hum of electronic locks and air conditioners filled the silence. Patricia's voice carried through the speaker above. "Make sure they're held until the system clears them. If there's any discrepancy, detain them." Skylar felt her chest tighten as the second officer, Officer Daniels, rifled through a small filing cabinet. He flipped through a binder of incident reports, frowning. Naomi sank to the bench, hugging her knees. Skylar knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her sister's shaking frame. Daniels looked up. "Their reservation flagged them for high-risk status," he announced. "That often means potential security threats." His tone was clinical, as if they were dangerous criminals. Skylar looked from Naomi to Daniels, eyes wide. Naomi's lip trembled. "We're just kids," she whispered so softly it might have been swallowed by the hum of the air vents. Daniels leaned over Naomi, staring down at her. "Don't talk back," he said sharply. "Our job is to investigate. You two are not cleared to board until we finish." Skylar's heart lurched. The room felt colder than the terminal outside. Her palms dampened. She bit her lip. "Please," she managed. "We're not dangerous." Patricia's voice crackled through the speaker again. "Make sure they've been fully frisked. No exceptions." Frisked. The word was a hammer blow. Skylar's stomach churned. Reynolds approached. "Out of respect for protocol, we'll need to check your outer garments," he signaled Daniels. Naomi's eyes filled, but she didn't cry out. Skylar's jaw clenched as Daniels patted down Naomi's arms and shoulders, then moved to Skylar. His hands felt rough. Every push and rub of fabric against fabric, every flick of a latex glove, felt like a violation, not of policy, but of their dignity. "Anything in your pockets?" Daniels asked Skylar. He emptied her pockets onto the bench, a hair clip, 2 granola bars, and the battered half of her father's card. Daniels picked up the card fragment, waved it. "One half of a VIP card," he said aloud. Patricia's sneer crackled through the speaker. "I suspected as much." Skylar's throat tightened. The card crumbled in Daniels's hand. "Stop," she said. "That's all we have of it." Her voice quavered. Daniels dropped the card half into a collected evidence bag. "Evidence of possible tampering," he muttered. Patricia's final blow came over the speaker. "Lock the door. Don't let anyone in until I get back." Reynolds turned the deadbolt. The latch clicked. Naomi buried her face in Skylar's shoulder, sobbing. Skylar wrapped her arms around Naomi, rocking her lightly. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here." Naomi's voice came muffled, shaky. "They hate us." Skylar forced herself to think of their father, Julian Ward, the CEO who never backed down. She remembered his calm reassurance. "You can always count on me." She straightened and wiped her eyes. Clearing her throat, she spoke as much to herself as to Naomi. "They're just scared of the wrong thing." Naomi peeked up. "What are they scared of?" Skylar swallowed hard. "You and me? Until Dad shows them they shouldn't be." A distant rumble shook the door. The sound of boots on the tile floor grew louder. The office phone rang, piercing the tension. Reynolds glanced at Daniels, then stepped outside to answer. Alone in the small office, Skylar hugged Naomi tighter. The hum of the ventilation was deafening now. She pressed her ear to the wall, straining to hear conversation, but all she caught was muffled voices, one calm, one tense. Perhaps that calm voice was her father's. Skylar closed her eyes, drawing strength from that single hopeful thought. She would protect Naomi. She would do whatever it took to remind everyone, especially Patricia, that these girls belonged exactly where they were supposed to be, on Flight 472 to Denver, with a father who refused to let them down. The little security room felt colder than ever. Skylar and Naomi huddled on that hard metal bench, the single fluorescent bulb overhead flickering in a steady, maddening rhythm. The door was locked, the security hold sign mocking them through its glass window. Every sound, footsteps in the corridor, the distant murmur of boarding announcements, felt amplified, a reminder of the world rushing past without them. Naomi hugged Skylar's hand, her tears long gone, but her chin still quivering. Skylar closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself to stay strong. She remembered her dad's words that morning. "I've got you. Always." That memory sparked something inside her, a tiny ember of defiance. She shifted, reaching down into her cardigan pocket to tap the tiny touchscreen on her smartwatch. Her finger hovered for a second, heart pounding so fiercely she wondered if Naomi could hear it. Then she typed, careful despite shaking hands. "Daddy, they won't let us board. They said we don't belong. Help us." She hit send, and the watch gave a soft, reassuring beep. That beep felt like a lifeline thrown across miles of terminal and cityscape. Skylar looked up at Naomi, eyes wide with worry and hope at once. "Done," she whispered. "He'll see it." Naomi sniffed, blinking rapidly. "Do you think he'll come?" Skylar squeezed her sister's hand. "He'll be here as fast as he can." They sat in a tense silence, the only proof of their plea the tiny red dot blinking on Skylar's wrist. Outside, Skylar could hear footsteps, maybe Marisol checking on them, maybe Patricia coming back to gloat. But Skylar refused to look. Instead, she focused on that single light on her watch. Sent. Up on the 45th floor of the gleaming Ward Tech headquarters, Julian Ward was in the middle of a high-stakes meeting with the National Airline Alliance Board. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Houston skyline behind him. Around the long glass table, Representatives from every major carrier sat in crisp suits, debating the rollout schedule for WardTech's new automated security scanners. And with a 98.7% accuracy rate across all demographics, we're confident this will set a new industry standard, Julian was saying, sliding a glossy performance report across the table. He gestured to the projection. Heat maps of scanner performance, cost-benefit graphs, user experience feedback. The board chair, a silver-haired gentleman in his 60s, nodded. "This is groundbreaking, Mr. Ward. We'd like to move forward to a pilot program in all NOBA airports by Q3. Julian tapped his pen, lips curling into a small, controlled smile. He was about to reply, point by point, when he felt a buzz against his wrist. His gaze flicked down to his smartwatch. One new message. "Help us." No context, just urgency. He paused mid-sentence, glancing at the room full of expectant faces. The chatter hushed as everyone noticed his distraction. Julian's jaw tightened, and for a heartbeat, the man known for his calm composure vanished, replaced by a father's fierce protectiveness. "Excuse me," he said, voice clipped yet polite. "I need to step out for a moment." He stood, straightening his suit jacket, eyes still on the watch. The board chair cleared his throat. "Certainly, Julian. We'll continue without you." Julian nodded curtly and walked out, strides long and purposeful. He passed rows of staffers in the hallway, all pausing to look at him, some in curiosity, some in respect. No one dared stop him. He reached the executive elevator and pressed L for lobby, but his mind was already racing toward the airport. Back in the security hold room, Skylar and Naomi had just started to relax when they heard hurried footsteps outside. It wasn't the lumbering pace of Officer Reynolds or the smug swagger of Patricia. This was brisk, urgent. Naomi sat up, eyes wide. Skylar's heart lurched. Against the telltale click of leather soles on tile, Skylar rose and went to the door, pressing an ear against the metal. A muffled male voice said, "Open this door now." There was authority in the tone, no question of choice. The cuff of Officer Reynolds' uniform appeared through the window, followed by the flash of an official badge. The deadbolt rattled, then clicked. The door swung open. Julian Ward filled the frame. He looked down at Skylar and Naomi, his stern business veneer melting into pure relief and something fiercer, pride, love, and simmering rage all at once. For a moment, time froze. Skylar's eyes shone. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, stumbling forward as Naomi ran into his arms. Naomi's silent tears finally broke, but in Julian's embrace, they felt safe, recognized, believed. He gave Skylar a quick, protective kiss on the forehead. "I'm here," he whispered. Skylar's knees wobbled. He supported both girls against him. Reynolds cleared his throat, stepping back. "Mr. Ward, this is a secure area." Julian held up a hand, his gaze steely. "These are my daughters," he said quietly but firmly. "You will not speak to them like this again. Open the gate." His words echoed with the authority of a CEO and the tenderness of a father. The officer scurried to the lock, relocking the bolt with a swift motion. "Yes, sir." As the trio stepped back into the bright terminal lights, Skylar looked around at the stunned crowd. Passengers paused, phones lowered. Camera apps blinked off. The buzzing of the terminal resumed, but now it sounded different. Attentive, respectful. Skylar slipped her hand into Naomi's, squeezing it. Naomi's grin was small and shaky. Skylar whispered, "We did it." Julian smiled down at them, his stern facade giving way to warmth. "We're not done yet," he said, giving Skylar's watch a glance. "But this is a start." And in that moment, as the Ward family moved together toward justice, the airport felt a little smaller, and the world a little more hopeful. Julian Ward's heels clicked against the marble floor of the Ward Tech headquarters lobby as he strode past reception without a hint of acknowledgement. The elevator's glass doors slid open on the lobby level, And he didn't pause to consider the polite smiles of associates waiting for rides. Instead, he kept walking straight to the black Lincoln MKT parked curbside, its engine idling in the humid Houston air. Inside the SUV, Julian dropped his leather portfolio into the passenger seat with a sharp snap. Folders slid free. Quarterly projections, RFP drafts, invitations to next week's gala. But he ignored them. They were no different than Patricia Davis's torn boarding passes. Irrelevant. He grabbed his phone and stabbed at the screen. "Gloria!" he barked the moment his executive assistant answered. His voice was hard, controlled. But beneath it lay a storm. "Scrub my afternoon. Cancel the NOBA rollout meeting. Get me legal counsel and regulatory affairs on the line. Now." "Yes, sir," Gloria replied, her calm tone a lifeline against the rising tide of anger in his chest. "I'll reroute your schedule and convene the emergency ops team." Julian ended the call and glanced in the rearview mirror at his reflection. Eyes steely, jaw clenched, every inch the CEO. Except now he was a father, and that identity drove him harder than any business deal ever could. His daughters had been humiliated, stripped of their dignity, branded security threats in a cramped side office. He would not let that stand. He slid out of the car and marched through the sliding glass doors of the private garage entrance. His staff, engineers and executives, pausing mid-stride at the sight of his urgency. He barely glanced at them, but caught a glimpse of wide eyes. In those seconds, the corporate facade cracked, revealing the singular purpose propelling him forward. On the 12th floor of the engineering annex, Julian entered the situation room. A dozen monitors glowed, live airport cams, system dashboards, conference call feeds. At the head of the oval table sat Diane Foster, Ward Tech's general counsel, and Marcus Lee, VP of Regulatory Affairs. Both looked up when Julian's phone buzzed again, an alert from his daughter's smartwatch. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian said, voice low and unwavering, "I'm here on personal and professional grounds. Effective immediately, I'm requisitioning every resource we have to respond to an abusive protocol at Houston Intercontinental." He slid a sheaf of papers across the table, flight manifests, images of Patricia tearing Skylar's ticket, and a screenshot of his daughter's watch alert. "My daughters were detained and called security threats, under my name, on my watch." Diane picked up the documents, her expression tightening. "Julian, if we're going to take action," he cut her off. "We're not negotiating. I want the National Airline Alliance to revoke JetSure's security certification across all FAA-affiliated airports. I want a nationwide grounding of every JetSure flight until they submit to a complete audit of their passenger procedures." His gaze swept the room. "We'll present it as a safety issue. Their crew has demonstrated reckless profiling. They put children at risk. That's enough to justify an emergency order." Marcus, accustomed to smoothing regulatory wrinkles, leaned forward. "That's an unprecedented demand. The FAA would never—" "Watch me," Julian said, standing so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. "I'll lean on the political capital I've built. We've partnered with the FAA on screening tech pilots. I've sat on NABA safety committees. I know who to call." His voice was a promise and a warning. Diane exchanged a look with Marcus. Then she nodded. "Understood. I'll draft the emergency petition. We'll cite Title 49, Section 44901, Passenger Safety Protocols. We'll argue that JetSure's crew has breached the standard of duty of care for minors." Julian allowed himself a single nod of appreciation. "Good. And prepare a press brief. I want media ready the second the order drops. I want every airport TV monitor rolling footage of Patricia's meltdown and the security threat memo stamped across the manifest." He paused, then added quietly, "This isn't about retaliation. It's about principle. If we let one airline treat my children that way, we let them treat anyone that way. It ends now." A tense silence followed. Then Gloria appeared at the doorway, tablet in hand. Meeting scheduled for 10 minutes. Teams assembled. Julian checked his watch, noting the time since his daughter's first message. 30 minutes. Thank you, he said. He turned on his heel and strode out, every bit the executive with a mission. But now that mission was deeply, personally invested. Back at Gate C29, Skylar and Naomi sat in the open space where the fence once confined them, their father's arrival dissolving the isolation. They watched as officers and jet-sure managers scurried, whispering urgently into phones. Their escort, Marisol, approached tentatively, offering gentle reassurance. Skylar nudged Naomi. Something's happening. She cupped her hand to her ear, listening. Revocation order. FAA emergency directive. All jet-sure flights grounded. Naomi's eyes widened. Grounded? Does that mean we can't go anywhere? Skylar smiled, a quiet triumph shining through her tears. It means they're in trouble, but it also means Dad is fixing this. A hush fell over the gate area as an announcement crackled overhead. Attention passengers. All jet-sure Airways flights are temporarily grounded nationwide. We apologize for the inconvenience. Passengers exchanged stunned looks. Some clapped softly. Others murmured into phones, eager to share the news. Skylar reached for Naomi's hand. They didn't need to speak. The world had heard their story, and their father's fury had lit the fuse for justice. Julian Ward's fingertips hovered over his phone screen as he stormed into the executive briefing room at FAA headquarters. The polished mahogany table gleamed beneath the chandeliers, but Julian's reflection was all business. A dozen top FAA officials and NABA representatives sat waiting, some visibly nervous, others confident they'd seen it all. On a wall-mounted monitor, live feeds from terminals across the country flickered. Dozens of jet-sure gates idling, aircraft at their gates. Julian wasted no time. With a curt nod to the FAA administrator, he tapped the call button. A synthesized ring echoed in the silent room until the administrator's calm voice came on speaker. Mr. Ward, we've been expecting your call. He drew in a steadying breath, channeling every bit of authority he'd built as CEO and father. This is beyond a simple service complaint, he began, voice clear. My daughters were detained, labeled security threats, and insulted in front of a crowd. That constitutes a breach of the duty of care for minors. Under Title 49, Section 44901, I'm formally requesting an immediate emergency order. Revoke jet-sure Airways' security certification and ground all jet-sure flights nationwide, effective 30 minutes from now until they submit to a full audit of their passenger screening protocols. No exceptions. A murmur rippled around the table. The FAA's general counsel cleared her throat. That's an extraordinary request, Mr. Ward. Revoking an entire carrier's certification on such short notice requires substantial evidence of systemic failure. Julian laid out the evidence. Scanned images of boarding passes torn in half. The security ticket stamped, high risk. Recorded audio of Patricia Davis calling his daughters fraudulent. And the timeline proving the detention. He handed over a dossier stamped in bold red letters. Urgent. Safety violation. Unaccompanied minors. This isn't isolated human error, he said. It's corporate policy run amok. If the FAA won't intervene, children will keep suffering. Someone at the table whispered into a headset. The administrator leaned back, studying Julian's calm insistence. We'll convene the safety review panel immediately. If they agree this constitutes an imminent threat to passenger welfare, we can issue an emergency grounding under our provisional authority. Julian's jaw tightened. He glanced at his watch. 20 minutes until the deadline he'd set. I expect a decision before 30 minutes are up. Lives are at stake, including my daughters. Silence fell. Then the administrator spoke again, voice formal but firm. Mr. Ward, we're issuing Emergency Order 1187. Jet-sure Airways security certification is revoked effective immediately. All FAA-sanctioned operations by jet-sure are suspended until further notice. A written directive will be delivered to every major U.S. airport and posted on the FAA's public portal. We'll also notify the NTSB and DHS for ancillary security checks." A collective exhale swept the room. Julian clicked off the call and exchanged a brief nod with the administrator. "Thank you," he said. "And please expedite the public notice. My daughters and every passenger deserve to know their safety matters." Back at Gate C29, Skylar and Naomi sensed the shift before the announcement crackled over the PA system. Clear words boomed through the speakers. "Attention all passengers. Effective immediately, Jet Sure Airways certification has been suspended by the FAA due to critical safety violations. All Jet Sure flights are grounded nationwide. Passengers with alternate itineraries or questions, please proceed to customer service." The terminal erupted. Some gasped. Others cheered softly. A handful of travelers rushed to consoles, rebooking on rival airlines. Skylar's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. Naomi clung to her arm, mouth agape. Marisol, the unaccompanied minor attendant, approached, voice trembling with relief. "Oh my God, girls, he did it." She handed them fresh boarding passes on another carrier. "Here, first class, direct to Denver. Just, you two go." Skylar nodded, tears of triumph shining in her eyes. "Thank you." Naomi pressed her sister's hand, still unable to speak. Across the concourse, Patricia Davis stood by the counter, pale and shaken. Nearby, a uniformed manager held a stamped envelope from FAA enforcement. He whispered into his radio, brow furrowed. Patricia's face crumpled as she read its first line. "Your security certification is hereby revoked." She sank onto a stool, dread washing over her. Skylar and Naomi slipped past the stunned crowd, escorted by Marisol through a side corridor. As they walked, Skylar caught sight of the live flight status boards, every JetSure flight listed as grounded by FAA. Naomi whispered, voice crackling with awe. "They're all stopped." Skylar inhaled deeply. "He wouldn't let it go," she said softly. "He made them stop." A man in a business suit stopped them. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you the ward girls?" Skylar nodded. He held out a phone with a news clip playing, images of two little girls at Gate C29, voiceover describing the FAA's emergency order. "You just changed the whole system," he said, awe in his voice. Skylar glanced at Naomi, who nodded, pride replacing fear. They took each other's hands and continued down the hallway, two small sisters in crisp school uniforms, escorted by a former stranger, but now protected by the full force of federal authority. And in that moment, as the Denver gate came into view, they knew this was more than a personal vindication. It was the start of a new standard, one where no child, no passenger, would ever be called a security threat without consequences. The digital display above Gate C29 blinked from boarding now to grounding in effect in large red letters, and a hush fell across the crowded waiting area. Skylar and Naomi stood just outside the dusty white line marking where passengers queued, too small to see over the counter, but close enough to feel every charged look in the room. A tall man in a crisp blue uniform stepped forward. He was the JetSure station manager, Mr. Harrington, his tie loosened and shoulders tight with pressure. He cleared his throat, and the overhead speakers cut in. "Attention, passengers of JetSure Flight 472. Effective immediately, this entire crew is permanently decertified nationwide by order of the FAA." Even as the words echoed, Mr. Harrington repeated them into his handheld mic. "This crew is permanently decertified nationwide. You will no longer see these uniforms operating any JetSure flight." At that moment, three of the attendants who had worked the gate, Patricia Davis and two colleagues, were summoned forward by airport security officers. Their crisp red blazers now looked out of place beneath the glare of midday lights. The crowd watched in stunned silence as an officer approached Patricia first. He snapped on a rubber-gloved hand and unclipped a shiny silver badge from Patricia's lapel. The badge tumbled into the officer's hand and clinked softly as it hit the metal tray at his side. Patricia's perfectly coiffed hair fell forward as she stared at the badge, disbelieving. "No, you can't do this," she whispered, voice cracking. The officer didn't look at her. He turned to her two co-workers, repeating the badge removal process with the same cold precision. Their mouths hung open. One attendant, her eyes brimming, dropped her boarding pass scanner and stumbled back. Skylar and Naomi pressed together, watching as the flight crew's world unraveled. For a heartbeat, the terminal was eerily quiet. Then, a ripple of gasps spread through the passengers waiting to board. A man in a business suit raised his phone and began live streaming the scene, framing Patricia's rigid shoulders and trembling hands. Nearby, a cluster of teenagers who had laughed at the twins just an hour before exchanged awkward glances. A hush came over them, and one girl said softly, "That's unbelievable." Patricia wiped at her mouth, as though tasting the words she'd spoken to Skylar and Naomi. "You clearly don't belong here." Now, she belonged nowhere, at least in any jet-sure operation across the country. Mr. Harrington spoke again, voice somber. "This decision follows a federal finding of reckless profiling and unsatisfactory passenger screening procedures. We regret any inconvenience to our valued customers. Thank you for your patience while we reassign you to alternate flights." A murmur of approval rose. One passenger clapped once, softly, then another joined in. Soon, polite applause echoed as jet-sure travelers turned their backs on the now-defunct crew. Skylar squeezed Naomi's hand. Naomi's eyes were wide but glistening with tears. Not tears of fear this time, but relief and a dawning sense of justice. Skylar felt her chest tighten beside her sister, a mix of vindication and disbelief. The cruelty they'd endured summoned its own reckoning. Marisol, the unaccompanied minor attendant, led the twins closer to the counter. She offered them 2 new boarding passes, first-class seats on a partner airline, and a gentle smile. "Go on," she said softly. "You deserve better than that." As Skylar and Naomi moved forward, the man live streaming approached them. He showed them his phone screen. The video already had hundreds of views, comments flooding in with outrage at Patricia's treatment of children. One viewer wrote, "This is why we need accountability." Skylar glanced at Naomi, then looked back at the crew. Patricia's face was pale, etched with humiliation. The other attendants stood stiffly, shame bearing down on them more heavily than any luggage. Naomi swallowed and whispered, "They're gone." Skylar nodded. "They were never supposed to be here." She straightened her cardigan, chest swelling with quiet pride. "Let's go." They strode past the counter, shoulders back, heads held high. Every step was a reclaiming of the power Patricia tried to steal. As they walked, a small group of passengers fell in behind, murmuring praise for the twins. A grandmother patted Naomi's head. A businessman offered Skylar a thumbs up. Skylar allowed herself a small smile. The terminal's hustle returned around them, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements for other gates. But something had changed. The crowd felt cooperative instead of callous. They'd witnessed a punishment fitting the crime, public humiliation of the cruelty done to 2 innocent children. At the far end of the concourse, a new gate agent greeted them. "Welcome aboard Flight 512 to Denver. Skylar and Naomi Ward." Skylar handed over her pass. The agent scanned it with a quick beep and smiled. "Right this way, ladies." Naomi paused, looking back at gate C29 one last time. The empty counter and scattered jet-sure uniforms were a silent monument to justice. She turned to Skylar, eyes bright. "I think I like first class." Skylar laughed softly, looping her arm through Naomi's. "Me too." As they stepped onto the jetway, the man's live stream flickered off, replaced by an FAA bulletin on overhead monitors. "FAA enforcement action. Jet Sure Airways certification suspended nationwide." Skylar and Naomi settled into plush leather seats, the world of Jet Sure behind them. For the first time all day, they felt safe and seen. Skylar sank into the plush leather seat of Flight 512, her heart still hammering from the whirlwind of the last hour. Naomi was already pulling the tray table down, arranging the in-flight peanuts their escort had handed them. Outside the window, jet bridges and workers in neon vests buzzed around the tarmac. But on the overhead info screen, something unexpected glowed in bold red letters. All Jet-Sure Airways flights grounded nationwide. FAA emergency order effective immediately. Passengers around Skylar stirred. A woman 2 rows ahead paused mid-bite on her pretzel, eyes locked on the announcement. A businessman dropped his newspaper, jaw slack. Cabin lights reflected off hundreds of smartphones flicking on to capture the moment. Naomi's eyes widened. They really did it. Skylar reached out, squeezed her sister's hand. He did it. A hush spread through the cabin, replaced almost instantly by spontaneous applause. Strangers who moments before had been absorbed in their own departures now turned to one another, exchanging nods and smiles of solidarity. From the cockpit came the gentle chime of the seatbelt sign being switched off. Over the intercom, the pilot's voice crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. As some of you have noticed on our in-flight monitors, you are now traveling on a partner carrier due to an FAA order suspending Jet-Sure Airways operations. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience. We expect smooth sailing from here on out. A murmur of approval rippled through first class. A flight attendant in crisp navy paused in the aisle to applaud softly, then resumed her duties with a nod to Skylar and Naomi. Skylar let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She leaned back, eyes glistening. Naomi wrapped her arms around her in a quick hug, her face bright with relief. "I'm proud of him," Naomi whispered. Skylar smiled, her chest tight with emotion. "Me too." Beyond the cabin, across airports coast to coast, the impact was immediate. At Dallas/Fort Worth, gate agents ushered Jet-Sure passengers toward information desks. At JFK, monitors flashed the FAA notice alongside live news feeds. Reporters standing before grounded red and white Jet-Sure jets lined up on the tarmac, rows of aircraft held in place by an emergency directive. Social media tickers scrolled rapid-fire reactions. "Papa Ward brought the thunder!" "Justice for 2 little girls!" "Ground jet sure trending nationwide." Back in Skylar's row, an elderly couple sitting next to them swapped phone screens to show each other photos of Gate C-29 from earlier that day. The empty pen, 2 small girls clinging together, a lone red blazer draped over the counter where Patricia had once insulted them. The husband cleared his throat and said quietly, "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Naomi reached into her pocket and pulled out the other half of their father's business card, now taped carefully back together. She handed it to the woman. "He fixed it," Naomi said softly. The woman smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. "He sure did." Skylar looked around the cabin at faces lit by cabin lights and overhead screens. Parents lecturing children, businesswomen tapping at tablets, retirees nodding in approval. For once, everyone was on the same page, a shared moment of righteous vindication. She turned to Naomi. "You know what the best part is?" Naomi shook her head. "We didn't have to fight. We just had to tell the truth." Naomi's grin was radiant. "And he listened." Skylar's gaze drifted forward toward the cockpit door, as if half expecting to see their father in the pilot's seat. She imagined Julian Ward standing there, arms folded, watching over them. He'd used every bit of his authority, not to punish, but to protect. She felt a flush of pride surge through her, and her lips curved into a confident smile. A flight attendant wheeled her beverage cart down the aisle. She paused by Skylar and Naomi's seats, offering 2 juice boxes. "Congratulations on getting your flight back," she said softly, lowering her voice. "Enjoy your trip." Skylar accepted a box with a grateful nod. "Thank you." Naomi popped the straw into the top, already peeling the tab. As the airplane began its taxi toward runway 33L, Skylar gazed out at the runway lights stretching ahead, blinking in orderly lines. She thought of Gate C-29, of the pen where they'd been locked, and of Patricia Davis, now stripped of her certificate. Her uniform hung in crates for evidence. Justice did not happen with a roar of violence, but through calm, decisive action. One emergency order signed in Washington, D.C., but sparked by the voice of an 8-year-old. The engine spooled louder, and the plane surged forward. Naomi squeezed Skylar's hand again. "I feel safe." Skylar glanced at her sister, her heart swelling. "Me too." As Flight 512 lifted off, climbing into the twilight sky, overhead screens still displayed the FAA order, now accompanied by a ticker announcing an international review of passenger screening protocols. Across the nation, regulators scrambled to adopt the new standards Ward Tech would propose. A paradigm shift in how families and children were treated at airports had begun. Skylar and Naomi leaned back in their seats, the distant lights of Houston fading below them. Somewhere among those lights was a Gate C-29 left behind, but it no longer defined their journey. They were soaring above it now, carried not by jet fuel, but by a father's fierce promise kept. The cabin lights were dimmed to an evening glow as Flight 512 cruised toward Denver, but Skylar and Naomi's minds were still swirling with everything that had happened. They'd settled into their first-class seats with their hot meals and fluffy blankets, but comfort felt new and strange compared to the tension of Gate C-29. Skylar gazed out the window at the sliver of moon above the twinkling runway lights. Naomi nibbled on her dessert, eyes distant. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Naomi broke the silence. "Do you think they feel bad?" she asked, voice soft. Skylar sighed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I hope so." Their conversation faded as the scene shifted back at the terminal, outside their flight's gate, long after the twins had disappeared through the jetway. Back in the waiting area, a handful of passengers who'd witnessed the twins' ordeal lingered behind. Among them was Mrs. Ellison, the elderly woman who had clutched her toddler tighter when Skylar and Naomi were detained. She had watched, frozen with regret, while Patricia tore up tiny boarding passes and officers escorted the girls away. Now, the terminal was quieter. Gate C-29 stood empty, the red "Boarding Now" sign flickering off. Mrs. Ellison shuffled forward, holding a small box wrapped in silver foil. She approached the unaccompanied minor desk, where Marisol looked up in surprise. "Excuse me," Mrs. Ellison said, voice trembling. "May I leave this for the girls?" She set the box down gently. On the label, in careful handwriting, "Sorry, I did nothing. Anne Ellison." Marisol's eyes glistened. "I'll make sure they get it." A few rows away, Mr. Delgado, a businessman who'd tapped away on his tablet as the scene unfolded, folded his tablet shut. He caught Marisol's eye and approached, clearing his throat. I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said awkwardly. He pressed an envelope into Marisol's hand. "I should have intervened. I have contacts on other flights. If they need any help, I'd like to offer." Marisol nodded gratefully. "I'll pass this along." Even the gate agents themselves felt the weight of what had happened. In the employee break room, Patricia Davis sat alone at a stainless steel table, the weight of that morning's cruelty heavy on her shoulders. A coworker, Jamal, slipped her a half-eaten granola bar. "Here," he said quietly. "You must have missed lunch. You look upset." Patricia stared at the granola bar and then at Jamal. She shook her head, voice tight. "No, I'm okay." Jamal leaned in. "I saw what happened. He bit his lip. "You didn't have to tear those kids down like that." Patricia's eyes flooded. She swallowed twice, then accepted the granola bar. "I know," she whispered. I'm sorry." Jamal didn't say anything. He just nodded and moved away, leaving Patricia alone with her regret. Back on Flight 512, Marisol appeared in the aisle, holding a tray. At the front of first class, she paused by Skylar and Naomi. "I have something for you," she said, settling the silver-wrapped box on Skylar's tray table. Both girls leaned forward. Skylar carefully peeled back the foil. Inside lay 2 chocolate truffles, each nestled in a tiny paper cup. A slip of paper rested on top. "Forgive me for being silent. I'm ashamed. A friend." Naomi's hand covered her mouth, and Skylar's eyes welled up. She passed one truffle to Naomi. "Thank you," Skylar whispered. Marisol smiled. "People aren't all bad. Some of us see what's right." She patted Skylar's shoulder. "Enjoy. You deserve it." As the flight attendant moved down the aisle, picking up empty dishes, a man in a gray suit paused at Skylar and Naomi's row. He introduced himself as Mr. Green, an attorney seated a few rows back who had been on the phone arguing business deals earlier. "Skylar, Naomi," he began softly. "My wife and I watched everything you went through. It was wrong. We've donated to a scholarship in your name to support children's rights at airports." He took out a card and laid it on Skylar's tray. "The Green Fund for Youth Travel Safety." Skylar blinked, stunned. "Thank you," she said, voice catching. Naomi squeezed her hand. Mr. Green straightened. "Just promise me you'll always speak up when something's unfair." He offered a gentle smile. "You taught me that." Skylar looked at Naomi, and Naomi looked back with a shy, grateful grin. In that moment, they felt not just vindicated, but surrounded by kindness. All the casual witnesses who had remained silent at Gate C-29 had now found quiet ways to speak their regret and make amends. Naomi tucked the chocolate into her pocket. "I feel warm inside." Skylar nodded. "Me too," she exhaled. "Sometimes coffee in first class isn't as sweet as this." Naomi giggled. "Better than chocolate, even." Skylar reached into her bag and pulled out the taped-together business card. She held it up so that the cabin lights caught the gold lettering. "This is the real VIP pass." A few seats away, the pilot peeked into the cabin and gave them a thumbs up. Another quiet apology, another nod of respect. Skylar settled back, chin up. "We belong anywhere we choose to be." Naomi grinned, confidence shining in her eyes. "Anywhere." And as Flight 512 climbed into the night sky, the silver box and the gentle apologies reminded them, and every passenger aboard, that while cruelty could happen in a careless moment, compassion could follow in 100 small acts, restoring faith in the humanity around them. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the Ward family's Denver hotel suite, casting a warm glow across the room. Skylar yawned and stretched, still wrapped in the memory of last night's turbulence, both in the air and on the ground. Naomi padded over to the window and peered down toward the bustle of taxis and shuttles below. "Do you think they really changed everything?" Naomi asked, voice hopeful. Skylar slid off the bed and grabbed the remote, flicking on the small flat-screen TV mounted in the corner. The morning news was already in full swing, bold headlines scrolling beneath the anchor's calm delivery. In historic move, FAA announces adoption of Ward Tech's unbiased screening system at all major U.S. airports. Skylar felt her heart skip. She sat on the edge of the bed, motioning for Naomi to join her. The anchor explained that within the next 6 months, airports from San Diego to JFK would begin installing Ward Tech scanners, machines rigorously tested to ensure equal treatment for every passenger, regardless of age, race, or background. A graphic illustrated side-by-side comparisons. The old system's glaring red alerts disproportionately targeting people of color, and the new system's uniform green checks. On screen, a graphic showed Julian Ward addressing reporters outside the FAA headquarters. He stood tall, flanked by banners that read, "Safety for all," and "No passenger left behind." He spoke clearly. "Today, we take a stand for every child, every family, every traveler who deserves dignity at every step of the journey. Thank you to the FAA for choosing fairness." Naomi clapped her hand, excitement lighting her face. "Dad did it!" Skylar smiled, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. "He did." She paused the TV and turned to her sister. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone." They dressed quickly, Skylar in the same school uniform she'd worn yesterday, Naomi in her bright cardigan, and joined their father in the suite's small kitchenette. Julian greeted them with quiet pride, setting fresh orange juice and breakfast pastries on the counter. He handed each girl a steaming mug of hot chocolate, the steam spiraling lazily upward. "I saw the news," Skylar said softly, wrapping her hands around her mug. Julian sat beside them, his presence a steady anchor. "The FAA's decision is a milestone," he said, voice warm. "It means no other child will ever be treated the way you two were." Naomi's eyes glistened. "I'm glad." Julian nodded. "Me too, but this is just the beginning." He reached out, brushing a lock of hair behind Skylar's ear. "Ward Tech will continue to refine the system, improving accuracy, reducing wait times, making travel smoother for everyone." Skylar imagined airports where every passenger stepped through a fair, unbiased process, where no one was singled out because of their skin or age. "It sounds like a dream," she said. He smiled, kissing the top of her head. Dreams can come true when you work for them. After breakfast, they prepared to check out. The elevator ride down felt like a victory lap. Every floor that passed brought them closer to home and to the life they'd fought to protect. At the curb, a line of black SUVs awaited, drivers holding signs for other VIP guests. A small crowd of reporters recognized Julian and raised cameras. He waved them off gently. Today was a family day, not a press conference. Inside the car, Skylar gazed out the window as the city drifted by. Naomi nestled into her sister's side, clutching the folded business card that had started it all. Julian drove in silence, focused but content. The radio played soft music, punctuated by a news bulletin. FAA also announces task force to oversee implementation of ethical AI in transportation security, co-chaired by CEO Julian Ward. Skylar's brow arched. "You're co-chairing?" Julian glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yes, we'll work with airlines, airports, and advocates to set firm guidelines so no one ever reverts to old biases." Naomi beamed. "You have so much to do." He laughed quietly. "There's plenty to keep me busy, but families come first." He reached back and squeezed both their hands. They drove through the airport's perimeter road, past Terminal A's gleaming glass walls. Skylar thought of Patricia Davis, stripped of her uniform and badge, sitting somewhere stalled by the consequences of her actions. She didn't feel vindictive. She simply felt that this was how justice was meant to work, measured, systemic, lasting. As the car turned a corner and the Denver skyline came into view, Skylar sat up straighter, inhaling deeply. She looked at Naomi, who returned her gaze with bright, determined eyes. Julian cleared his throat softly. "Girls, I'm proud of you both," he said. "You showed courage in a moment of fear, and you reminded all of us, that sometimes you don't need to shout to fight back." He paused, letting the words hang. Naomi looked up at him curiously. He continued, voice steady and kind. "You just need to stand tall and let the world adjust to your height." Skylar and Naomi smiled at each other. In that moment, as the morning sun glinted off Denver's glass towers, they knew he was right. They had stood tall, and the world had bent to meet them.